Hello, everyone. This is Curt and Brad. It's Saturday, September 9th. It's 12 p.m. And I'm trying to figure out how to spin this into something funny, Brad. Brad and I have been chatting about news. And during the last week, he said, I want to make you repeat some of these things. So you've got a couple of arcs you want me to read.
So just for the audience, Curt mentioned a few arcs that I could not write them down fast enough on Sunday. So now it's Saturday, the week later, and it's like, okay, so I'm going to get Curt to make sure that I capture these arcs for the group, for myself too. And one of them, and we already went over this, but I will repeat it for the audience. The mission is roughly to create a universally commensurable, scale-independent, value-neutral language across all disciplines.
Is universally commensurable in there?
I said that first.
Okay.
Universally commensurable.
That's right.
Okay. And then the next one was a ethical arc. And it says, including these four elements, and I want to make sure it's complete. It's self-determination, sovereignty, reciprocity, and duty.
Okay. I have a paragraph and I recite all of it or parts of it at times, right? But it's like you tease me about all the time. The reason I repeat this is because I want it to stick, right?
The problem is you say it too fast because you've said it so many times. And I cannot write as fast as you can mumble it at me. Okay, I'm ready to go.
The natural law of cooperation.
Okay.
Which is conversely really the natural law of non-conflict.
Okay.
It is also the European group evolutionary strategy.
Okay.
And it consists of the achievement of self-determination by self-determined means.
Yep.
By reciprocal assurance of sovereignty in demonstrated interests.
Yep.
And reciprocity in display word and deed. It should be and test of reciprocity and display word and deed. Or by test of reciprocity and display word and deed. Requiring duty, truth, excellence, and beauty.
Okay.
Thereby limiting ourselves to competitive markets for cooperation and adversarial court for conflict resolution.
Yep.
At the cost of the limitation of those unfit for all of the above. Limitation of the reproduction of those unfit for all of the above.
Is that it?
That's the short version.
That one made a mess. I didn't have enough paper that time.
So all that really, it's just a proof.
Yes.
It's all it is. It's the complete proof of what are you trying to achieve? Why are you trying to achieve? Which is universal cooperation. In other words, conflict avoidance. What's required to do so? How you ensure it? How you administer it? And what are the costs? What I suppose I didn't leave out is, I left out is, thereby maximizing the rate of evolutionary discovery of, innovation upon, adaptation to, and evolution of cooperation as a means of defeating entropy.
Right.
In other words, it's the process of evolutionary computation.
Mm-hmm.
And my point is, you can't do better than that. It's not possible. And you know that because the way you do is you exhaust every dimension of what's possible. So it's not obvious from that. Like when I say there are 8 dimensions, we got to falsify in truth, and there's so many dimensions we got to falsify in reciprocity. There's only so, there's only so many dimensions to every grammar. There's only so many dimensions to language. Is that we just test we discover all the causal dimensions.
Right.
We discover the limit of those dimensions, and then we enumerate those dimensions as criteria.
Yes.
I said reciprocity and display word and deed. I didn't define reciprocity there.
No.
Truth, and I didn't define truth there. And I said sovereignty and demonstrated interest, and I didn't define demonstrated interest. So what the problem is, when you start defining all these things, right, you get quite a bit of prose, but the paragraph is really the way, it's the thing. It's like I can recite it because that's what it takes. Once you recite it enough times, it sticks in your head. Right? It's like, I was talking to the guys a few minutes ago, and Gabriel was saying it's these dimensions here, and yeah, it's exactly right. You think it's really hard, but it's really it's not that many lists. I mean, the biggest list we have is the first principles, right?
Maybe 20.
Yeah, it's not that big, but that's everything fits there. I mean, you could say, well, the grammars is a big spectrum, and that's fully, that's pretty much, well, I mean, yeah, but it's just deflationary, normal, and inflationary, and deceit. I mean, it's, just pick where you want to go.
Right.
It's only that many. So there's not, when we say it's not, you have to write the things down, right? As memorable form, right? Right. So the demonstrated interest, reciprocity, truth, right? The self-determination by self-determined means, natural law. You have to write down, did I say truth? Truth and reciprocity?
Yes.
And then you write down the first principles, you write down the method, and you're starting to come in where you have, you're already started out with what is are we trying to accomplish, which is the goal of this thing, which is the universe commensurable value neutral scale independent language, which describes everything in the universe, right? And so you can talk about anything without having all this goofy inflation, conflation, nonsense, misrepresentation, fictionalizing, other bullshit, pretense of knowledge going on, right? And you just say that and say, well, it's like we said, it can fit on a poster. The problem is, it fits on the poster, and you look at it and you're like this person. You say, what the fuck does all this mean? It's like you can show, after you understand chemistry, you can show people the goddamn periodic table, and they're like, oh yeah, I see how this goes to next to this. These are metals, and these are so you can fit all these noble gases, and this is the radioactive shit down here, and you sort of see how this fits together, but it's really, you've got to memorize it, a little bit of it, and then you just got to apply it 100 times, right?
Right.
Until it sticks, because it's not. I mean, right? You would agree. It's not. You've said this over and over. It's overwhelming in the beginning, but when you get through it, it's not that hard.
It's not that hard. It's like this. It's like the poster is useful because it gives you the crib sheet to practice the recitations.
Yes.
That will come in handy when you're reading the pamphlet.
Right.
Come in handy when you're reading the book.
Oh, yes, exactly.
It's all right.
It's just like, it's like this, why is this, why? It's just weird to me, because if people expect this to be like philosophy, accessible, right? Whereas it's like, no, I mean, it's like math or formal logic or programming, right? It's close to, it's basically the programming language of law. right? Combined with economics, right? I mean, the programming language, right? That's really what you've got. So, I mean, why would you expect the programming language of economics and law to be something you're going to pick up like with first glance? You're not gonna, right? I mean,
Not intuitive.
it's not intuitive. It's the same thing with programming. Is that, today we're so saturated by it, people get it. It wasn't that long ago that when you try to explain programming to people, they were just like, they couldn't comprehend it because they couldn't figure out why the computer couldn't understand what they meant. Now, people today think that's a stupid idea, but it was the normal idea not that long ago. Why doesn't it understand what I mean? It's not what I meant. Well, it's what you said, right? But it's not what you meant.
Right.
So people the same way. Is that why would you expect that it's, why? It's because it's about moral things and it sounds like English.
Yeah. Right? Seems like it should be intuitive.
It seems like it, and it's not.
Oh, sorry.
And once you develop the intuition, it's like, oh, the world is simple, right? You just keep seeing it all over the place. It's like, that's all that's going on here. And your mind doesn't run places and come up with all these silly stories or whatever. It's like, no, it's just.
That's right. That's right. Because you don't need to justify because you see a first principle at work.
Yes, it's just Martin and I were just talking because we play up our difference, right? It's mostly for the audience and partly for our mutual humor.
Right.
But when he always likes to go drill down on these things, right? And he wants to drill down and see all the negative, and I'm like, I want
to
see the positive. But in the end, it's just like we're just doing the same methodology. Gabriel's get pretty damn good at it too, so it's just not that. So the problem again you get into is like this is the point I'm just trying to make, and I got a little distracted there, which is that your wants about the world can still come through.
Right.
In other words, it's real. You can know the first principles, but that won't change how you want the world to be different. Right. So it's important because people think it's like you have to think this way. No, I mean, it's a science. It's like measurement. We can tell what's going on. It doesn't mean I won't still want to have my lofty opinion of women or my optimistic view of mankind.
Right.
Martin won't have his post. I mean, because he grew up, he was born just as the communist thing ended. He won't have that, right? He sees the whole American thing as spreading all this immorality, right? Where I see it as the strategic ambition from an economic standpoint, right? So you still bring it. I mean, you bring it the same way. You bring your viewpoint, and you just did it beforehand. You bring we all bring our viewpoints into it. It doesn't change that. It just gives you a language to talk about it, where it's it's not nonsense.
Right.
I think the only difference is that there's only so many of us that want to actually see the world as it is, and then and just have the language to talk about it. Whereas if you're just in this moralizing, gossiping, shaming crap that the left does, you don't really want to know the truth. You just want to undermine to get your way.
It's very interesting because I was talking to someone and it was like the name caller came in and was calling names, and it's like, but never with any substance to any argument at all, just making noise. Which is like the Hebrew for that is resist. Racist is resistance. You're just making noise, and it means noise. There you have it. I did in there.
Yes. So I'm conscious of the fact that we talk about this every week, and then we make some progress on our stuff. And people really want the result. They want ours to be done. The people want us.
them and me too.
Them and us too, right? So, and I there's probably some value to the fact that when we first come out with the book, right, the pamphlet will be literature, is that everybody's going to say, okay, I get it, right? The people that are with it. So it's not quite as bad as if we had just put it out and then we got to make people get it and they fight it. Right. So there's some merit to the way it's going.
Yeah, it's okay.
But anyway.
It's just I was thinking of it before we got on the line here. It's like this is they said in the 70s, as you may recall, serve no wine before it's time.
Yes, yeah. We I worked with a guy named Len Pacheco, very flamboyant person, and he said, he used to say, solve no problem before it's time.
Right.
And he was a digital equipment executive, and his attitude towards this was that if you solve a problem early, everything that happens after you solve the problem just fucks up your solution. So solve a problem when you need to. And so what he really was saying is solve the problems you need to first, and then solve the problems you don't need to when you need to. Right. You know, and it was always, I thought that was a great way of.
The good logic.
He was a character, though. He was intimidated by me, which I always found very odd. He tried to pretend he wasn't.
That was important. It's face saving.
Well, it's also back. This is like the it's like late 80s, early 90s. And I hadn't quite gotten over my you fucking people are too stupid to really talk to. All right, but I'll do my best when I have to. I hadn't quite got over that yet. What do you? So I would just go to a staff meeting because I was in charge of one part of the organization. And if it got stupid, I would just leave. I would just get up and leave. And it affected the meeting culture dramatically. Right. But it gave me the right kind of reputation. So I'm like, I'm not adding value here. I have work to do. Right. Or which is something I would say, or this isn't a constructive conversation. But it was back when I was more, when I was younger, and I hadn't learned to be as kind as I have as my age.
Gregarious.
Well, I mean, I was still gregarious in right circumstances, but in business, I was like, are you wasting my fucking time? I got shit to do, right? This isn't serious. And you know, when you're coming with when you're working with people and they're a little bit older and they're not from the same background you are,
right?
You know, it's like, you know, you feel like there's, in my view, you feel like there's a little too much cigar smoking in the lounge chair conversation going on when this is a really simple problem. You know, I remember one time they bring in all these logos from this artist. I'm like, what fucking artist did you call to do this? Because these are shit, right? So go. I said, well, this is the least bad one you have.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. It's actually a worthy reputation to have that.
Yeah.
It was like
business.
It was a worthy reputation to have, because until that point, I run my own companies, right? And so this is the first time I was sort of working with other guys in a startup, right? Yeah. And they were quite a bit senior than me. I was what, late 20s, early 30s, and they were all in their 40s. They'd all come from a big company, and I was trying to explain to them what they learned was not right. Because it was fun. We built a great company, $100 million business, right? And in almost no time at all. And we had a shared vision is that the CEO was quite good about saying how to operationalize things. Very big in operations guy. So we would build software to do everything, to run everything in the business, and it worked flawlessly. And I did the same thing. I took up that habit, carried it forward. And I can't say how accurate that was. If I look at the CEOs I learned from, it's a small number of very important things. And it's different today because we assume those things. But you're talking about the 80s and 90s. we didn't know the things we know today. I mean,
Yeah.
we took them for granted because everybody's proven them out. It's sort of like the crisis the world's going through doing this AI stuff right now. We had to rapidly modernize retail, which we did in one company. And we rapidly modernized law in another company. And we rapidly modernized the provision of professional services in another company.
Mhm.
And, then we rapidly modernized taking brands onto the web in another company. So, you're always rapidly modernizing people in periods of change. It's actually a fairly fun. I mean, I had all the fun. I mean, if you're a generation now, it's not fun. These kids are screwed. I mean, the only place that's really bright sunshine right now is it's just AI. It's just AI. Even then, a lot of these guys are going to get cut out of their jobs.
Mhm.
I didn't need to go sideways on this conversation. I'm sorry. That was pointless.
It's all right. It's all right.
So you had the arcs for me.
Okay, yeah. Get back on the page. Okay. There's a serialization, operationalization, and adversarial competition arc. But I don't know if that doesn't cover it.
It's the method.
Okay.
The method says that we are habituated to using words in a conflationary form.
Yes.
Favorite examples are reason, rationalism, and logic, right? Or faith, belief, trust, and confidence. And so what we do is we say whenever there's a term here that people tend to use, faith is a good one. So you have faith in the scientific method. No, I don't have faith in it. I have faith in God. I have trust in the scientific method. Right. You must have faith in someone else, or you must believe something. Actually, I don't believe much of anything. I have confidence in things, but I don't believe them in much, right? Because belief is a word from philosophy, faith is a word from religion, trust is a word from law, and confidence is a word from economics. So which thing do you have? Which thing do you have here? So what we do with the method is we take a term that we're using and we disambiguate it, which means we turn it from a word into a term in a spectrum of terms. So this term takes so in our case, the common one we use is evil, immoral, unethical, amoral, ethical, moral, virtuous, right? That's a one everybody can understand. And we say, okay, well, let's take all these terms that mean doing something bad and create a spectrum from one end to the other. Now, sometimes it's just this direction. Sometimes, like in our ethics, it's both directions. Sometimes it's a tree, right? I mean, there's all sorts of.
Right.
Sometimes, a lot of the times, it's a V, right? So there's something here. It's a triangle, right? There's a start point, a maximum point, and a fall off point. So we basically we collect all the terms we use. So we call it converting terms into measurements by the process of enumeration, serialization, operationalization, adversarial competition into a system of measurement. Now, that applies an order, and it's not like that. It's in other words, you have to do all those things, right? But what we try to do is say, okay, I've got this bunch of words, and now I've got to operationalize them, put them in order, and adversarially compete them so that they're on every definition is unambiguous, right? So we're trying to removing overlapping definitions, because just as the examples I gave, faith, belief, trust, and confidence, people might, the dictionary does this too. They use it as if these words are the same when they're not. Right. So what I generally tell people do is look up the etymology of every word. Because
Yeah.
that will probably give you the unambiguous origin of it. And then you look up the etymology, then you operationalize the term. You say what actions is going on, what actions are being performed. And then you put them in, you sort them, and you say, okay, is there anything overlapping? Right. And then how do I disambiguate what's overlapping? And then finally, do I have to narrow the definition, redefinition, revise the definition, or replace the definition? Right. And the reason is we try to avoid what's neologisms. We try to use existing words and reframe them instead of inventing new ones. One of the things I really dislike, and this is something Hoppe stuck in my head when he beat me up over it, was that in his way, right, it was very gentle and very subtle and very professorial. But I know him, right? So I know him pretty well. So when he's saying something in professorial tone, I know the German behind the mind saying "you fucking idiot," right? So it's like whenever he's talking, it's like I can hear him talking to himself in his mind, right? It's just funny to me. So anyway, so he said, don't use the neologism. So I got rid of all neologisms and I favor redefinition if necessary. So you'll see this quite a bit in our definitions. That's why you have to know them, is because they're measurements, they're not analogies. That's what happens when you turn into operational prose and put it in a sequence with others where it's unambiguous.
Yeah.
So that's the process of the method. And so that's what we do with terms. We do the same thing with sentences.
Yes.
Right? Which is an expression. That's a term, and we have an expression with a sentence. So we expressions like formula, right? They have a grammar that we have to meet. And this is, I'm going to see, can I do these off the top of my head? You have promissory form, operational prose, fully complete sentences, describing full transactions, absent the verb to be. And I'm still missing two. Right. I mean, so, I can't do it off the top of my head right now. My sinuses are up there. So anyway, so you have the method for the vocabulary, and now you have the method for the sentences. And so combinations of sentences should be like in a journal, an accounting ledger. They should be complete transactions of changes in state, those Markov change. And if they are, then there should be unambiguous, right? Because that's the first rule of grammar, continuous recursive disambiguation. So we take the sentences, the vocabulary, we continuously recursively disambiguate it. Go over like that. And we take the sentence, and the sentence should continuously recursively disambiguate it to produce an unambiguous statement that's testable as a complete sentence versus consisting of a complete transaction. Then like a ledger, all of your transactions should end up to a balance, a summary of changes in state. So you just have to have this model in your head, right, as you're writing, so you could check your writing. It's not like you actually do it. People give us all the, I can't talk like that. Well, neither do Brad and I. I mean, the rest of us, we just know how to do it in our head, so we make sure we're not speaking incorrectly. Just like you say, did I use the right grammar on that? Right? I can't remember if it's is or it's or whatever, So we do the same thing. And the last piece is the sciences. Right. And so when you get to so now you have the words, you have the sentences, and now you have what to talk about.
Right.
Sciences is just the ternary logic applied at all different scales. There's a 20 some odd rules there, and you just say, okay, has these words in these sentences using these rules, right, satisfy the criteria for that's in testimony and reciprocity? I mean, if I just explain it like that, it's not it's not absurdly different. It's basically writing a proof in ordinary language, right? And the whole problem of ordinary language is ambiguity.
Yes.
So by removing ambiguity, we make it every word, instead of an analogy, to a measurement, right? And but with a measurement, it's unambiguous, and so we can actually test things, right? And it turns out that this is incredibly effective. Like, you know, I was like, well, you know, people want it to be more effective than it is. I'm like, no, understand, it's really hard to get by what we just described: first principles, testimony,
Right.
reciprocity, first principle, demonstrated interest. Right? If you do what we just did, it's absurdly difficult to tell a falsehood that isn't readily available, readily identifiable as a falsehood. So there's a tendency for people to want to write mathematical proofs without understanding the difference between logical set and operational proofs. Right? I mean, the mathematical, logical, and operational proofs, logical set is that there's way fewer ways to be wrong in math.
Yes.
There are in sets, right?
That's right.
And there's more dimensions in sets. Well, there's more dimensions in reality than there are in the sets, because sets are always based on a premise. Reality isn't. It's based on reality. So
Yep.
we have closure with reality. So we can say, you can't say that about reality. We don't have to know that you're wrong. We have to know that you can't say it's true. Right? And then what are we stuck with? So this is where we get into the magic of what we do that isn't in math or philosophy. It's that math is tried to be polite and truthful and is sacred. It's almost sacred. Philosophy tries to be polite and moral. But we're trying to, if you're testifying to something that you can't testify to, now we have an incentive. And now we're trying to figure out what crime you're trying to get away with.
Right.
Right? So that's why people don't like what we do. Because there's this presumption of etherness to mathematics.
That's right.
There's a presumption to reciprocal goodness and philosophy. There's no such perception in science and law, right? Matter of fact, it's the opposite. We're not justifying anything. We're saying, and we're not justifying, we're falsifying this. So all these tests we're doing is say, can you say this without lying, right? And it's actually very easy for us to figure out if you're lying if you try to say something this way, because it becomes blatantly obvious. So so what we do is we create a universal. When I say, what are we doing? We're creating a universally commensurable, value neutral, scale independent language across all disciplines that functions as a falsificationary operational logic of falsification. In other words, we can tell if you're lying. Right. Once we figure out you're lying, the rest is to go to lying and go to our lying instructor set and say, why are they lying? Well, the lying is always done for X number of reasons, and it turns out we can know why. And once we go from that, we can go to male and female sex differences in cognition, and we can tell you why they're lying, whether they know it or not. Right. And so I realize that I don't think we've actually done this whole spectrum before, have we?
No.
We haven't done the whole sequence before in public. But that's really what it is. It's a universally commensurable, value neutral language across all dimensions that tests whether you're basically lying or not. And if you're lying, it tells us why you're fucking lying. And most of the time you're lying, it might be because you're trying to lie, but it also might be because you don't know you're lying.
Just accidentally lying.
Because your genetics are telling you to lie. Right? I mean, you don't know. I mean, and then lying doesn't necessarily mean that, you might think you're being moral, but you're not, because it's not a question of whether you're being moral. We know whether you're being moral or not by test of reciprocity. So you're not right, even if you have moral intuition that you're right. Right? Nobody wants to hear. I mean, it's like, you wonder why people don't like what we do. It's because it's prosecutorial.
I know it's like this because it's like the answer I came up with by listening to that little arc was this is like, it just tells us how much we need to punish you.
Yes, exactly.
Or you're lying.
So math is like this abstract thing that's out there that doesn't personally affect us, right? philosophy is something that we can negotiate on, right? But law isn't like that. It's like, what can we punish you about? Right?
No, how much are we gonna punish you
And how
for?
much are we gonna punish you? So it's like, I completely get the intuition of, because we're really reversing the world around, right? We've turned the world from positive justification.
Right. So, but I mean, philosophy is reasonable.
Yes.
The standard, and it's like, yeah, we're not reasonable. No, it's factual.
No,
Just
facts. So I completely get it, right? I so get it, right? But that's why I say we do law, right? Which is via negativa. We don't do what you should do or must do or whatever. We do only what you must not do and should not do, right? And then we leave you up to agree on things. So that's falsificationary. Philosophy, which is the attempt to get people to agree to something, right, is really about negotiating, right? It's negotiating, finding a way to negotiate on a positive, right, on an assertion, an agreement. Mathematics is a kind of measurement of decidability independent of those things. And religion is sort of the authoritarian via positive version of philosophy, right? I mean, that's what everybody says. Philosophy is the bridge between the authoritarianism of the faith and the empiricism of the sciences. So, I mean, I actually really like that arc. That was a good arc we covered there, because it's like we don't really talk about the whole thing, do we?
no.
Right. And I wonder if it's my subconscious says, I don't want to talk about this because I don't want to admit that basically what we're doing is figuring out how to call everybody a fucking liar.
Right. Only the liars, Curt.
Oh, the liars. Well, I mean, most of us don't even know we're lying.
Everybody's lying sometimes.
Yes.
Sorry.
So, when I say, well, what's the ambition? I mean, what was my ambition to start out with? I wanted to create a value neutral of ethics and politics so we could have an honest conversation with each other. But then I got to the point where I have to solve the problem of truth. Well, I solved the problem of truth. Then I figured out, holy shit, the real problem's lying.
It's the opposite of the problem of truth.
Right? It's like, how do you solve the problem of lying? Well, that's actually effing hard, right? I mean, it was a hard problem. So when you work through this, and my whole ambition is really simple: is I want the politicians to stop lying to us. I mean, it's really, I mean,
Anybody can really have fault with that.
I mean, if I tell them, what's the purpose of you? I thought, well, what do you do? Well, that's hard to explain. A philosopher, a social scientist. I work in what you would consider epistemology and philosophy, or law. And like, no, what the fuck does that mean, right?
Right.
If I tell people, I try to work on making it impossible for politicians and academics and public intellectuals to lie to us. And they're like, oh, that's cool, right? Yeah. Right. And then the next thing is, that's impossible. Actually, it's not impossible. It was just really damn hard.
It's a big problem.
Yes. So anyway, I like that. That's actually the whole poster set, isn't it? That's the whole poster. You're always getting me to do stuff that subconsciously making me do stuff.
I was thinking about that. Curt, you're funny because
it's like I feel like the fucking German Shepherd that's stubborn and opinionated and always trying to bark at something, and you're a dog trainer trying to get me to behave.
I'm like this. I'm like, so I'll say something that I intuit is correct, and then I watch you calculate it out, and you're like, yeah, that works. It just takes a minute. It's like you run all the simulations, like, yeah, that works.
I always find there's these people on Twitter, they always do. I'm having a bad mood because of my legal stuff going on. So right. I'm more willing to engage in acerbic conversation, which I should stop myself from. I'll go back and delete them. But right now, I just like, if I get a chance to vent some frustration by calling some libertarian a nincompoop, right? It's fine with me, right? But I lost my train of thought. So I just go. So right now it's just I'm dealing with people online, and it makes me crazy when it's like they have no idea. I mean, people have no idea. It's why people don't. It's why people block everybody and don't interact online. It would be one thing if I was talking about something nobody cared about.
Right.
But since so many people care about it so deeply, right? And they're positive they're right.
They know they're doing good, and you are a problem child. It's interesting, isn't it?
Well, and you can't explain this to people. That's why we need the social proof.
You can't explain it to people, and it's yeah, yeah, that's right. It's like it requires some work to figure it out. There's
But
no
also you at least need a common vocabulary. And if you don't know the scientific method, the history of philosophy, the conflict, the philosophical conflict or the ideological conflicts or the political conflict, you don't know the economic circumstances, you don't know if you don't know all these things, people just run on whatever they pick up in life. And as we're talking to it's hard to meet a libertarian who isn't a good person, but they believe all sorts of stupid shit too.
right.
It's like, the Mises, Rothbard, I mean, fuck, dude, if you put it, that's a car. Turn that car on, I guarantee where it goes is right in the fucking gutter, because that's what you guys don't understand the commons. Well, it's because young men don't see advantage in the commons. Right. So I understand completely. And then conservatives, they're like I want a commons that means you're responsible, and a progressive means I want a commons where it means I'm not responsible. And so I mean it's just, so it's like I ignore the commons, libertarian. I want a responsible commons, conservative, and I want an irresponsible commons, liberal. And it's like, okay, well, of course you people all talk like you're nuts, right? I think you're intelligent, but it's just gene stalking. Wah, 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 wah.
Right.
Wind up toy, right? I mean, the wind up toy does the best it can and it bumps around. It's like those old robots used to have that would bump around the thing. They eventually learn, by bumping around enough stuff about where stuff is, right? That's, people mostly.
Just bots.
It's just sad. Anyway,
interesting to attach emotionality to it, Curt.
What?
You attached emotionality to it. I think that's interesting.
Say that. Explain that.
A fact.
Yeah, because I'm more sentimental.
You're sentimental.
More sentimental than you. I want. I mean, nobody would do something as stupid as I've tried to do here. I mean, it's absolutely a crazy. You have to be fucking crazy. If I knew what I was setting out going to accomplish by doing this, I would have told myself I was nuts. Right.
I know.
And so
I had to help you, Curt. It's like, oh my God, that man has too much on his shoulders.
So but it's because I give a shit about people.
Mm-hmm.
It's really that simple.
Noblesse oblige.
I mean, sometimes I will in bed at night when I'm tired of this crap and I've been arguing with some moron because I get in the wrong frame, right? And I think, look, here are all the companies I could build. I'm a little tired now, but another year from now, I guess I'm young enough still to get one more out of me, right? Probably can't raise the kind of money I could 20 years ago, but I mean, probably could get one more business out of me and have fun, work with some guys, make another fortune, or just. And I'm like, but I would always look at this and say, that's wrong. You have to do it. Right. And so that's the only reason I don't. But I tell you, having money and spending time with friends and blowing it on wine, women, and song, so to speak, or in my case, blowing it on building new companies, right? It's fun.
Yeah.
It's just fun. But I'm not sure this is fun. I know it's just right. So we do. You're the same. You can't laugh at me too hard because I know you're the same.
No, I'm here. I am.
Yes.
Here's my oar, right?
Yes.
Going the oar. It's okay.
All right. So
that's good work.
So we did good today, huh?
Yeah.
A little bit of an hour chat.
We covered some very excellent arts that are useful to the group.
I wonder if did you capture the art all the way through lying?
Pardon me? Did I capture it? I can capture it when I review it.
Okay,
when I review this video.
because that ought to be really how we organize the posters, really.
Right.
Really not that hard. All right, love you, brother.
Thanks, Curt. You have a wonderful day,
Okay,
sir.
Saturday, September 9th.
Hmm?
Saturday, September 9th. This is a chat. Thanks all of you for joining us. Hope you had fun. Brad, love you, brother.
Wait a minute.
Well,
You have to hit that button, like, subscribe, notifications, and then leave those comments, please. And then we'll meet again tomorrow.
yes. Love y'all.